Good morning. Welcome to Sosin classes. I know quite a few of you might have met me, quite a few of you must have spoken to me, and some of you must have undergone some kind of a training or the other with regard to anthropology for UPSC or maybe in general for UPSC. I know the times have been tough on all of us, and all of us in our own right were trying to get out of the whole kind of mayhem that was created. Things have been haywire, and we are trying to come to terms with the time, with the life, and with the events that are happening. And yeah, all that ends well is good, and we are hoping that, and we see the positivity coming up, and things are improving, and quite a number of students trying to come to study and things like that. So it is in that context, as per what we had promised it to the students to start a batch in the last week of June. We are trying to do that in the next 3 to 4 days of time. But before that, I thought I would have a brief interactive session with you, and thanks for joining us. The next, I think, 1.5 hours or 2 hours, based on what and how you ask questions and things like that. In the next couple of hours, we will be having this interactive session. And let me, before starting off with the complete session, let me tell you what exactly is the agenda of today. Basically, this is what we are trying to focus at. That is, we are trying to give you an overview of anthropology for UPSC. That is the general theme. And it has generally been the practice that even people from outside the UPSC family also try to be part of our learning process. So it's special welcome to those of you who are joining me, though you are not as a part of UPSC examination, but you are studying anthropology in your own right, either as academicians or maybe perhaps as a hobby or certain other things. Now, when it comes to today's agenda, today's talk, basically, I am trying to address the students or learners especially when it comes to, see, there are two things that we are looking at. One is UPSC learners and the others. Most of today's focus has been on UPSC students. So here we find different kinds of students. One is the one that are new to UPSC, though you know a bit of UPSC, new to anthropology. And the ones that might have started studying anthropology recently, and the ones slightly senior, I mean the people that have been pursuing anthropology for maybe a couple of years or so, so slightly an older lot of people. So this whole lot of group I am trying to address, and out of these, I think these two belong to one closer category, and these are the other two. And when it comes to these, the inquiry may be that what is anthropology? Their questions may be why anthropology, kind of questions we would try to look at. And when it comes to this lot of people who have already been pursuing anthropology, for them, they might be worried about, they might be asking about how to study the discipline of anthropology. And secondly, and one vital other question, how to improve whatever they have learned, and all those plethora of other questions such as how to present kind of things. And as far as this is concerned, I would be giving some brief information about this, because I don't want the session to be a very run-of-the-mill kind of a session where the same syllabus is being read out from the UPSC document. I do not want that kind of a thing. But then I would give you a brief overview of the syllabus in maybe perhaps a 10 or 15 minutes, and then we would try to mostly focus on how to study and kind of. So in the process, as you have joined us live, you can ask questions, and perhaps I try to pick up as many questions as possible so that you make the most of this particular interactive session. By the way, I did not introduce myself. I'm called Sosin. I'm an anthropology teacher here who has been teaching anthropology for about 15 to 18 years or so. As a student of anthropology, I have still been learning things, trying to improve, trying to present the best to the student whatsoever. Now coming here, people might be wondering what might be anthropology and why we should take this particular subject. See, basically, if I'm giving you in a single liner, this is seen as a social science. The discipline of anthropology is seen as a social science with a lot of scientific concepts, So, people tend to see this subject as maybe perhaps quasi-science, a part science whatsoever, maybe because of the kind of nature of topics that are being studied, nature of content that is being studied in this particular discipline. Is the voice okay? Okay. Voice okay. So basically it's a social science. Social science studying what? Social science studying aspects related to human. I try to put it in a brief three-pointer. That is what we study in anthropology. We learn who we are. Who we are may be a very diverse kind of a question. We will see what it is and where we come from, how we understand ourselves, how we understand others. So your entire learning of the subject is based on these three entities. Now, at one point of time, this was seen as a very esoteric subject, which could be understood only by a few people or maybe perhaps practiced by a few experts, kind of. But when it comes to this examination of UPSC in specific, and anthropology in India in general, we see that the popularity of the subject was basically because of the kind of marks it was scoring in UPSC, and because of that people might be taking. Most of you who might be attending this live session, except a few people who are writing the UPSC, might have studied anthropology in your school or college. So that speaks volumes of the importance of this particular subject for UPSC. Now, before going to talk about what we learn, etc., we will have to see certain things about this subject, namely, I'm not trying to give you the meaning from the dictionary, Webster's Oxford Dictionary, etc. I'm not really interested in giving those meanings, etc. But right now, let me have a mention of this. People study this particular subject, people who do not know this particular subject are there everywhere, especially when you go to the Eastern academia, Eastern societies, where the subject is hardly studied. There are several Western universities where a good lot of people have been studying this particular subject. Now coming to what constitutes this particular one, who study. So as I was telling you a little while ago, there are, when it comes to the UPSC, this is a very small segment of people, but there are huge number of others that are actually studying, practicing anthropology as the academicians, or maybe perhaps the people who might be applying the knowledge of anthropology for various purposes. Now, when I say this, people might be wondering where exactly we might be using this particular discipline. See, when it comes to, I'll just have a small word on this, then I will talk about this, then we will go to see what exactly is the focus of the subject in general for any kind of a learner for that matter, and how the student related to UPSC would be taking up this particular subject. Now, when it comes to UPSC, there are two ways in which a student might be using. One could be that that's how students generally ask, as far as the exam is concerned, where else apart from the optional subject we might be using anthropology. So when it comes to the exam, in terms of optional and in other papers. This is one question people generally ask. Secondly, how it is useful at work, maybe as a public servant, once you are in service, or maybe in the applied element. When it comes to examination, here you know pretty well that you are attempting the papers for 500 marks, and we always try to focus at about 330 plus 340 plus score, so that you get that extra edge required to be selected in the examination. That has always been our focus. Now, this apart, when it comes to the other papers, you have as a part of general studies, huge lot of areas basically. Huge lot of areas, to name a few: social sector, that may include good lot of populations like scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, women, minorities, other backward classes. This could be one. And there are specific people facing issues of race, racism. We have in the syllabus left-wing extremism. You might be studying elsewhere on areas of nationalism. There might be topics such as regionalism. There might be topics related to displacement. You might be having huge lot of topics related to development. When I'm mentioning all this and several others that you might be presenting, you might be studying for your general studies papers or for your general essay paper, all these and several others have been regularly been a part of the content, the curriculum of anthropology. So even otherwise, apart from the optional subject, in the other parts of the syllabus as well, there are quite a number of areas that have a bearing on the topics that you study in the discipline. This is one. Secondly, as I was mentioning a little while ago, when it comes to academia and when it comes to public sector, once you have been selected, once you are working, this is where a lot of importance of this particular subject can be felt, and people who have taken this subject and got selected, they are a testimony to it. Many of them trying to specialize on the areas that they have studied in anthropology, and some of them were coming back to me and talking about what kind of approach the discipline had taught them. So I'll give you a couple of examples here. Say, for example, this subject focuses on respecting the perspectives, respecting the others. So basically, if at all we have to say in a couple of statements, the takeaway of this subject, whoever it might be, whether an academician or a public servant, or maybe perhaps anybody in general who is studying this particular subject, a best takeaway from them is to get perspectives of others so that others are understood in a better way. Others are understood in a better way. And that's the key it plays, in whether you are working in the private sector or in the public sector, or maybe as a part of NGO, as a part of industry, wherever you are working, in all the areas of work, this forms the key thing, understanding the others in a better manner. And that is where the approach of the subject has been, and that is where one would be trained as a part of this discipline to not to be judgmental towards the others and not to be one-sided, not to be one-sided. And even if you have to be one-sided, towards whom you will have to have your leanings, that is also being mentioned in this particular subject. And I should also make a mention on this particular occasion that this is a subject that helps people siding with the people who are downtrodden, suppressed, oppressed, and disadvantaged. And that is the strength of this particular subject. So in the interest of these people, whatever critical analysis that you can give about any of the policies of the government, any programs or anything, the subject is most welcome. That forms the key there. So if this is the kind of an understanding the subject gives, it means that it is placing you in a very strong pedestal in especially the UPSC preparation on the one hand, and as a person in various walks of life, whatever job it may be. Now when I'm talking about this, people might be wondering what jobs people have. Any questions, ma'am? What jobs people have? Let me give you something here. There are several opportunities it creates. Pick up any field you have. I mean, one of our professors used to say this, that everything is anthropology under the sky. Pick up anything, you have concepts related to that you can apply, and you can approach in a much better manner than what you would be doing as a specialist in that particular field. So it may be like, in human resources, in science, investigation, culture, project development, etc. I'll give you a couple of examples there. Let me give you a small idea of what cultural understandings it presents, especially when we live in multicultural societies. Especially when we live in multicultural societies. The subject helps us understand the other cultures because the basic concept of the basic theme of study of anthropology is, of course, human with a special focus on cultural aspects. And from here things actually are introduced to various other areas outside the realm of pure cultural understanding, which we would be seeing a little while later when we go into the syllabus and a brief analysis of the syllabus. Now, when it comes to the multicultural societies, and that helps in the cultural understanding to the reader, it means that it provides us with huge lot of research orientation, several research methodologies. I'll give you one small example. We will come to this question a little while later, that is, somebody is asking sources and strategy. We will come to that. Let me give you a brief understanding here. When you go to your syllabus, for example, you have in paper 1, chapter 11. So when the link is sent to you, along with the link, a PDF is posted to you. You can keep looking into that PDF document when I'm discussing. In that PDF document itself, some basic readings and advanced reading books are also incorporated. That also you can have a look at. So when I am talking about chapter 11, for example, we have topics related to feminist anthropology, meaning the topics where female is the central theme, the topics which have to be understood from the female perspective, such as growth of the human and various stages, various biological, chronological stages of the human, especially menarche and menopause kind of topics, and fertility kind of topics. When we are talking about these, at one point of time in the discipline, there were issues related to research, there were issues related to getting the information from the sources and how to select the source from where the information has to be extracted. When I'm saying this, this is all a part of the field research that you do. So this subject helps one in coming up with new forms of research methodologies that can help understand the others. So it is not that when you meet the other people, when you want to get information from the other people, you are straight away walking to them, shaking hands and asking them whatever their culture is, and they telling you, and you coming and finishing your papers. Things do not go that way. So it calls for a lot of interventions. It calls for spending a lot of time with them. And in such a circumstance, when research has to be conducted, this is what is the subject that gives you the required inputs. It is not simply that. With times, throwing new challenges with field works. I mean, several of our students who had been into the PhDs and were field researchers, they were into, because of the COVID situation when things were not really favorable, their doctoral presentations got pushed away by maybe 1.5, 2 years or so. And in such cases, they are trying to come up with new ways of approaching the field. And that's where a constant upgradation of the discipline is happening. And that's one of the subject matters that you would be studying as a part of your discipline. And let me give you a brief account of your syllabus, and then we will be looking at the approach that you need to follow whatsoever. That's, of course, the second part of our content. What I'm trying to do here is I will give you a bird's eye view of the I'll be taking up only the relevant questions, sir. I'll answer this question as well in a little while from now, how to make notes for anthropology in whether in question and answer format or simple topic wise. We will see that. Let me give you a bird's eye view of the kind of questions, the kind of syllabus that we have. And we will also be trying to throw light on where to begin, where we are going to begin our lectures in the days to come. Here what happens is, in the very first chapter, you see the entire crux of the subject, meaning every other topic in small bits and pieces you find in this particular chapter. Whether you see the discussion related to branches of anthropology, or maybe perhaps one of the foundations of the discipline of anthropology, like Darwinian ideas, microevolution kind of ideas, or maybe perhaps you have things like, study of fossils, fossilization, evolution of cultures, that is in terms of lithic and non-lithic cultures. So when we see this, the several aspects that are there in different parts of the syllabus seem to be having occurred in the chapter 1. And when we go from 2nd to perhaps 8, there are a whole lot of discussions related to social and cultural aspects of the subject. What I am doing here is to give you a bird's eye view of the syllabus to those students who are new to it or who need some kind of a broader understanding of the syllabus. Now, coming to this, this must have attracted some of you, the social realm here. When it comes to 2, 3, 4, and 5, these are the ones that have specializations in specific areas. 2 talks about various social institutions, and 2 also gives us the concept of culture that forms the heart of the discipline, and how culture is studied we will be seeing at a later point of time. Now, coming to the other aspects, we study economic aspects of culture, political aspects of culture, and then we study religion. What we see in this subject is there is a whole lot of diversity, We see that there is, because of that newness, novel element that is involved in the discipline, there is less scope for you to get maybe perhaps bored, and there is a chance of and if at all you're a general reader and pursuing this subject academically, you can pick up particular areas for your specialized study and research for that matter. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So even in the case of understanding of the subject also, this diversity would help you in generating answers that give a comprehensive picture. Now let us look at that. When it comes to 6 and 8, these are the 2 topics, these are the 2 chapters where you understand the basic theoretical aspects of the discipline, various theoretical aspects of the discipline. You understand how anthropology must have emerged, which thinkers have emerged in what sequence, and what their focus area of study was. Such kind of things you study here, and you also look at research methodologies. You also look at research methodologies. This is as far as majorly your first section is concerned in your syllabus. Now, I will be approaching some of these questions as I go to look at this. See, if at all you have downloaded that document that we have mailed to you along with the link, I have incorporated some of the books there so that you can prepare on them. See, when it comes to the books, we see that newer ones keep coming in, and from time to time as teachers we have to read the new stuff, new editions, new readings, so that we are abreast with the developments in the subject and we give the best to the student. That forms our orientation basically. So considering that, the list of books generally I give to the students every couple of years. We try to revise the list, and that might give me a question like, we had followed this particular book, can we continue to do that, etc. Maybe for the new kind of topics that might have come in the new books, maybe perhaps you can do. So when it comes to this is first segment, I have mentioned in that booklet one of the very interesting book, that is Miller and We's Anthropology. Miller and We's Anthropology, a book that really gives you a beautiful, crisp kind of writing for your examination. So, Anthropology by Miller and We's. That helps you largely in social anthropology. And remember, when I'm trying to approach the other questions also parallelly, somebody was asking how to prepare a note, in which format I should be preparing, etc. See, everything you should base your preparation on the firm foundation of concepts. Having a proper conceptual understanding is something that is very, very important, and there is no shortcut about it. If at all, and it's not simply that your concepts are clear, and how the concepts in different parts of the syllabus are interlinked. That also forms a very important thing. So when you are preparing your note, that should be concept-wise preparation, but then when you are revising, when you are trying to improvise, practice on your writing, you pick up questions and try to use the concept-based material that you have written in order to generate an answer. So it has to be both. You should be writing your note in a concept base, and then when you are trying to improvise on your writing, you should be interlinking various concepts and try to present your answers from in the question answer format. So both are necessary. It is not that every topic that I am picking up, I am simply answering in a question answer format. No, there has to be a broader understanding that is very much required, because the way things have been moving in the examination in the last 3-4 years or so, we require a comprehensive understanding of the subject. Thanks for the questions. So this is what I was talking about. It is not simply 2020 paper. Maybe perhaps many of the students must have woken up in 2020, but UPSC has been constantly changing the way it has been asking questions. Even if it was not clearly mentioning that explain something from the current affairs perspective, but then current affairs based questions have always been there for a long time, and thanks that students started recognizing that. So basically what happens is that first of all, you have to be, good at your basic foundation, so that whenever you are reading a latest development in the discipline, you are not fumbling, you don't have problem in understanding. That is very much clear. Secondly, when it comes to the current sources, you are to read different magazines. The other day, a student was asking why was it that K.S. Singh was a part of the questions in the recent past. So I was trying to explain to him that, in one of the journals of Jharkhand, his article, his works were reviewed and presented in the Jan to June 2020 journal, and from there, most possibly, UPSC must have picked up that question, but K.S. Singh was very much expected. And the response the student was trying to give was that some random state journal, and how is it possible that the word random looks to be highly insulting actually. Nothing is random, no journal is random. We have to respect all the academic work that they are doing, and that's where from UPSC picks up. And we do understand, we do appreciate the problem of the student that, we have to study general studies, we have to study this, we have to study this. And quickly some people make a comment that we are not doing PhD here in anthropology, how are we to know, kind of things. So that's where I am trying, though I don't believe in the shortcuts there, let me give you something. We have one series in our website, Anthropology News Diary. Many of the students have been following this particular thing. On a daily basis, when we are giving you daily updates of anthropological news that has been there, that really helps. Whatever topic that you might have prepared earlier, you try to add the kind of things that we are giving from that daily noting. And there we are also trying to give certain questions based on the content that we are writing that day. We are trying to give from the old papers a couple of questions, and then we are trying to give 1 or 2 questions on a daily basis for a practice by the student. So this is one. And generally there are other ways also where we will be trying to help you out with the development of current affairs whatsoever. And before going to the next question, let me say this to you, and then I should also be continuing with the syllabus analysis. Generally what happens is that whenever I am taking a new batch, from batch to batch, whenever there is a brief break, before the COVID season, we used to have a proper break. Okay, fine. These are the couple of months that are there, and in the couple of months, I used to do some kind of an advanced learning in anthropology, and that I used to add to the coming batches whatsoever. That has been the trend. That's how I think a teacher has to do, developing on the current things, developing on the new things that are happening in the discipline. And that's where we will be able to give the best to the student. That's how things have been. And right now also, last week I was doing this particular program because it has always been there in my mind to capture certain things from the simple societies, tribal communities, so that the protection of the intellectual property, their knowledge, their culture can be done. So it is from that perspective I was undergoing this training of drone pilot, so that I can use my technology in order to capture the very important things from the tribal world, so that I can do my little to the discipline of anthropology in general. There are so many newer things that are happening, and the discipline has always been growing. It has been revising, so it is a very dynamic kind of a thing. From time to time, things have been changing so fast. At one point of time, people might not have heard things like visual anthropology or digital anthropology, or one of our students from the one of the ongoing batches, he was actually somebody who studied Python and who was working on that, and quite a long career that he had in the coding thing. But then suddenly he says, no, I want to come out of it, but then he is trying to reorient his learning, reorient his career to what he calls digital anthropology, where various kinds of machine languages and the coding languages he can be using for the cultural studies and codifying them, learning culture in a better way. So it looks to be very fascinating actually, and that's what the subject has been offering, the fascinating journey, fascinating new things kind of. So this was one. Current affairs overlap, that's what I was talking about. Whenever you are preparing for any topic, keep it open. I mean, don't restrict yourself, don't reserve yourself that, I would be stopping here. This is what is my content. I am not going to upgrade this. Such kind of an attitude should not be there. Whatever latest things that are coming up, but then don't run around for them. First of all, your concept has to be clear. Your presentation you will have to focus at. At the same time, you should see to it that whatever recent developments are there, be open to them. Try to incorporate in your writings. Surely, don't know who had written this, should the research and development works be incorporated in the answer? They should definitely. I mean, based on the kind of question that you are answering, research and development has to be incorporated in your answer. Can you suggest the strategy and tips for those who are writing this 2021? That is one of the questions. Yeah, I will talk about this. 2021. If at all you had been following me for quite some time, several activities that we do for UPSC anthropology. For those of you who are preparing for 2021, and if you do not know the following things that I am talking about, you have to, you have to pay some attention to that. Your exam 2021. First and foremost is, I presume that you are done away with your basic reading and concept building whatsoever. And hence, as I was telling a little while ago, current information you try to update, you try to add to your information. Secondly, there are two things. One is, on an annual basis, I release some important areas for the main examination of UPSC. This exercise I had been doing very religiously for quite a long time, and that is no more than an activity of sanctity for me. And in order to give those kind of expected areas, we put in a lot of effort going through different journals, following different things. Many of such areas we would be discussing in your classes. Some of you who might have attended the classes, I might have given certain ways of expecting questions, etc. Of course, that may not be the thing for a student, but then you should also be knowing where I should see for the kind of areas that I can guess for the examination. So this one I release. For example, your exam, if it falls in the month of say January, generally every year it used to be in October or October generally. So if at all your exam is in October, I would release the couple of lists in the month of July and August, consisting of several contemporary areas. Even if you haven't done those as a part of your regular learning program, you should make it a point that whatever areas that we have incorporated, whatever questions that we have incorporated, you should be studying them thoroughly. And apart from this, we have also started one quick revision program called Anthro Run. This generally we do just before your main examination, that goes into about 3 to 5 days of program with 3 hours of duration, and in each class we would be discussing several expected areas, maybe perhaps 18 to 20 areas we will be discussing. So in 5 days of time, not less than 80 to 100 different areas we will be covering. That's going to be a very hugely helpful program. That's what students have been finding this. And third is right. That's where I run one program called Learn to Write Right in Anthropology. How exactly to write answers in anthropology, that's what is our focus on that. Writing is very, very important. Make it a point that every day you write at least one answer for yourself preparation. And when it comes to your, if at all you are answering any test series kind of a thing, weekly one full-length test would be sufficient, where 2 or 3 hours you are spending on the question paper. But then on a daily basis, at least one, because suppose you are writing the next year, you have finished your basic preparation now of anthropology, the time between now and the examination, you should not keep aside the entire optional subject, so that it gets vaporized kind of. See to it that at least one answer, whether it is a 10 marker, 20 marker, you try to answer on a daily basis. I think this will definitely help you. You ask him what it means. This question, last exam, it was asked, liminality of Victor Turner, should we require to go deep? See, they are not so very deep in content, basically. He picked up a smaller topic that as a bigger entity we study. And yeah, I mean, if at all you understand it that way, a deeper learning is definitely necessary. No superficial kind of a learning helps you, basically, because when applied questions are being asked, you should be in a position to apply the knowledge of the subject in a much better manner. That's how things have been. When I was trying to explain several things with a deeper understanding, some people come up and try to ask, is such a depth necessary, kind of. So do not undervalue, underweigh the UPSC's way of asking the questions. We will have to understand that they constantly try to improve the questions and then make them much more contemporary, and hence try to see to it that you learn the subject in a comprehensive manner, and especially when it comes to the theoretical aspects of the subject, social and cultural theory for that matter. In some other question the girl was asking, do paper 1 and 2 interrelate with each other? How to approach anthropological theories? See, this is a very wild kind of a term if you ask how to approach, kind of. I am afraid whether that word I will be able to do justice in 1 or 2 statements of answering. Basically, the entire subject of anthropology, which is a social science, and for that matter any social science, its basis is on theory. The theoretical foundations have an impact on the entire other discipline, how the content is studied, how it is presented, what should be your orientation towards what you are studying. Everything you generally learn from the theory. So anthropological theories and various thinkers, they shall be incorporated throughout your discipline from A to Z. There is no exception for that matter. There are thinkers who worked in archaeology, thinkers who worked in language, thinkers who worked in maybe perhaps biological anthropology. Everywhere they are there. So anthropological theory has to be incorporated either in terms of theoretical concept or in terms of the content they must have studied. A little while ago I was talking about Minarche kind of things. They were studied by popular anthropological thinkers. So the kind of names, the kind of works anthropologists have done, they should and must be incorporated in your answer, and that's how, as I said to you, there are no shortcuts for that matter. Interlinking of paper 1 and 2, yes, that has to be beautifully done. It is not like, you are compartmentalizing, and I'll give you one small example for that matter. You have in your paper 2, I still did not discuss the syllabus. In your paper 2, you have concepts such as this name you will find in paper 2, chapter 3. Where such kind of topics occur, this is not something that's a standalone topic. That is a topic that is based on some of the important theoretical foundations of which we see in paper 1, such as cultural diffusion. I mean, the people who must have studied the subject, who are trying to ask questions on how to improve, for them this example I am giving. If you are a first timer to the discipline, you do not know ABC of the subject, don't bother. You will learn it eventually. So what is happening here? If at all you are simply writing in a couple of paragraphs about what is sacred complex, that doesn't help much. You will have to link it with paper 1. What are the relevant kind of concepts there? So interlinking is very much important. That's where the quality of your answer is actually judged. Now, when it comes to R&D in anthropology, there is huge variety of sources, not one for that matter. But if at all I have to give you something that has good mileage and that can help you, one could be Smithsonian. You can see Smithsonian studies, and then there is one other called Wiley's, the website of Wiley's. Wiley's is actually an institution where constant upgradation of the contemporary research happens and they are the people who try to preserve whatever is produced from across the world by the researchers, by the field workers and writers. So they could be something that can give you global examples for that matter. And when it comes to India, several basic journals are there. Man in India, one of the very common kind of journal. Then Eastern Anthropologist. Now, because you have asked, I am giving all this information. Again, don't say that we are not writing PhD kind of. Basically, these are the ones based on which UPSC asks questions, and that's where I generally believe that teachers also should try to extract information from. Which platform? I don't know. कुछ और है दे दीजिए नहीं दे let me take you to the other parts of your syllabus in the meantime and other discussions. People might be wondering why we should be studying anthropology, and this is a question that I am trying to bring for the people who are novice to the subject, who do not know much about the subject. I said, for you, the crux of what we were talking about till now was that for a new reader in anthropology, what constitutes anthropology and why we should be studying anthropology, these form the very basic questions. What we study in anthropology is primarily about the man, the human, we said. And before I talk about why we study, let me talk about what we study a bit and in what alone we are trying to give you the UPSC syllabus. What? We study man. What about him? What about him? We study who we are. As a human, who we are. As a human, who we are. As maybe perhaps randomly I am taking this, as an Indian, who we are. Or maybe as a Hindu, who we are. Or as a Muslim, who we are. Or a person coming from one particular region, who we are. Or maybe perhaps people belonging to one particular language family, who we are. Or maybe perhaps people who are belonging to a particular occupation, who we are. So, who we are is one question that we try to understand in this particular subject. Secondly, where we come from. The subject always talks about, you have studied the subject before, you are new to the subject. You are new to the subject. Whatever questions are there, keep asking. We are only having a couple of boys here who just walked in. We are properly following the COVID rules, not many of them, a couple of them are there, myself, my cameraman, and our assistant, 5 people around. Where we come from, the subject actually focuses at origins. You must have, tried to inquire into your past, and sometimes you might have asked your parents where from your grandparents are, from which country, from which continent, from which occupation they might have come. Now, that kind of an inquisitiveness to know the past. Was it that we belonged to this particular region right from the beginning? Or maybe did we come from somewhere from outside? Say, for example, my great-grandparents, grandparents, they came from Mashhad in Iran. When they have migrated, they have migrated for some purposes. And my inquiry had always been that, are we having the similar kind of culture, similar kind of racial features, physical features, language features, which our grandparents, when they were residing there, are they have, and do we have any kind of similarities? Or is it that because we have migrated, we have been assimilated into the group to which we have migrated? I mean, these are real puzzling things. When I'm talking about this, it is not simply about this. There might be several important questions. People might be having questions about their religion, about their belief system. People might be having questions about their political systems or their economic systems. And above all this, religion seems to be capturing attention of several people, especially in the social sciences. And this is the very reason. See, in this particular batch that we are going to start in the last week of June, that is 23rd of June, which we are starting, I will be starting with the very interesting topic of religion. Generally what I try to do is from batch to batch we try to change the sequence in which we do. I try to keep experimenting. What if I start with something that would look to be very rather uninteresting to the general crowd? Can I start with that and convince the student about that kind of a, so it's like, we try to experiment with you, not that, we are trying to experiment with the kind of content that we are giving. We are trying to experiment with the approach so that we can improvise and present the best of it. So for the batch that we are going to start on 23rd, I will be starting with the topic of religion that has been very captivating on the one hand, and on the other it has been controversial also, and that is going to be one. I only strongly pray to the God that there should not be any kind of communal violence in the classroom when we are trying to do this particular thing. And we would see how anthropology tries to approach the concept of religion, worldviews and faiths, etc. This one. So where we come from is maybe perhaps from the religion, from the region. Sir, if at all you have a look at your syllabus document. You have the syllabus document with you? Syllabus document with you? Krishna? ఇది ఆ బాబుకి ఇచ్చేస్తా సిలబస్ డాక్యుమెంట్. వాళ్ళకి బుక్స్ ఇవ్వలేదా? సిలబస్ బుక్స్ తనకి ఇచ్చి. సిలబస్ బుక్లెట్, సిలబస్ బుక్లెట్స్ ఇమ్మని చెప్పండి కింద నుంచి. If you are not from Telugu region, don't mind. I have used a couple of Telugu words. Don't name it as regionalism. Sir, if at all you look at your syllabus, there are some very interesting, very contemporary kind of topics. Whether you accept or not, race and racism have always been very interesting areas to talk about, if not in indulging. From across the globe, we hear of people complaining or talking about racism. There could be several occasions. There should be several occasions wherein we see that such kind of topics would make the headlines. Now, when I talk about this, you may perhaps look at 9.5 in paper 1, 9.5 in paper 1, and you have chapter 2 in paper 2. 9.5 in paper 1, anthropology syllabus, 9.5 in paper 1. It talks about race, racism, race formation, race criteria, kind of things. Did you find out, sir? Your name, ma? Nagaraj. And similarly, you have in paper 2, chapter 2, where you have things like, ethnic and biogenetic variability. Ethnic and biogenetic variability, where we study races of India, how races are classified in India. So when I'm talking about it, race is one of the interesting areas where from questions generally are asked. 2019 there was one question where there was a debate-based question, Aryan debate, and whether Aryans have come to India or not. So that was one kind of a question that was asked, and if at all I could recall that question verbatim, Risley's Aryan debate, that was the question that was asked. So these are the kind of questions, the kind of concepts wherein we talk about where we come from. And third and very important thing, this is where your basic foundation of anthropology lies, how we understand the diversities and similarities in being humans. We know pretty well that no two humans are one and the same, whether in terms of how you look, whether in terms of how you think, what your tastes are, what your preferences are, dislikes are. You are not one. But then we try to see on a broader plane. When we say that we are one, We are one maybe on different scales. We are one maybe as a family. We are one maybe as a kin group. We are one maybe as a clan. We are one maybe as a caste. We are one maybe as a religion. We are one maybe as a nation. And above all, maybe we are one as being human. When I say we are one, what constitutes that oneness that varies in degree based on when you are moving from your family to a larger humanity level. So that is what we are going to see here. So many times, day in and day out, you might be facing this problem in your family, among your friends, etc., that there is always a difference of opinion. You end up fighting, you end up arguing, kind of things. We are doing this because there is inherent diversity within us. But this inherent diversity can be used as a strength, not as a limitation. That's what is the inquiry in anthropology. Is that clear? So as we open up the subject, questions? As we open up the subject and we start to discuss various things in the subject, you'll understand that. Now, once again, reliable source. See, whenever we talk about reliability, I think is a relative word. See, the question that this gentleman had given is that, is it necessary to go through documentaries made on tribals or only those currently in news? And then, is there any reliable source for such documentaries? I have to say something here. Take anything for that matter, any idea or any event for that matter. There is a difference in how you look at it. So, if at all somebody who is trying to flee their country as a refugee entering your country, from your perspective, he is an intruder. He should be stopped. He should be repatriated. But from the refugee's perspective, things are not right there. There is no choice left, and hence he is fleeing. Okay. And from the government of that country's perspective, these people might have been considered as some errants, maybe some disturbing element, and hence there have to be controls on them. So three entities I am talking about. One, their own government, and then people who are actually trying to deal with refugees because they are a burden, maybe on your economy, maybe over a period of time they might start claiming the resources and various other issues for that matter. It may also result in the kind of violent kind of a relation between that country and yourself, because you are facilitating the refugees, you are trying to help them. So when we are giving this particular example, these three people have their own perspective. So problem may be one, and interestingly, what a problem is, identifying something as a problem itself is a subjective thing. So when you say reliable source, reliability can be checked based on the facts that you are coming up with, or maybe perhaps the kind of research that you have done, or the kind of conclusions you might be coming to. So, and hence, in order to limit this kind of a subjectivity, you go by the organizations, named organizations. Say, for example, Anthropological Survey of India, which is one of the important sources on which we depend, or the kind of journals that I was talking about. And when we talk about videos, kind of things, the documentaries are shot based on maybe perhaps what a documentary maker is seeing at that point of time. And what he's seeing today might not have occurred 10 or 20 years ago. If somebody had made a documentary 20 years ago about the same culture group, say for example, you have in South India a tribe called Kurumba. People from regions of UP, Ooty, you might be knowing that. If at all your picturizing them, maybe 50 years ago, they were largely different from what their social institution now is, how their economic relation with the neighbors is. So what you're shooting today was not there earlier. What you see today may not be there tomorrow. So the documentaries are momentary information about the things that are going on now, and definitely they go in getting registered as a historical document, and hence you can depend on them, and they can be a valuable source. And whenever you are quoting any documentary, it is always better you quote the anthropologist or the researcher that is involved in making that documentary. That would give you an authenticity. So don't simply take the crux of it saying that as a generically as somebody said kind of a thing, rather than that you would be pinpointedly try to make out. Now let me take you to the other ones. I was talking about this, why we study anthropology. I try to look at it from 6 different points of view. We study so that we identify a problem and facilitate in solving a problem. Generally what people understand is, and for the sake of this particular talk, we accept that anthropology is seen as a subject that studies the tribes, or to be much more specific, a subject that studies simple societies and cultures. We are not getting into those arguments that there are several complexities in simple societies such as tribes. We are not getting into those argumentative statements, etc. That's a classroom thing which we will be doing there. Certain things that look very simple are not actually very simple. Being simple is a complex thing. We will discuss these things in the classroom, but here, if the discipline is seen as something that studies the tribal societies largely, they might be incorporating certain problems. Look at your syllabus, chapter 6, paper 2. In chapter 6, paper 2, you can see the listing of several tribal problems. Listing of several tribal problems, whether that is educational problems or health related issues, displacement, rehabilitation kind of things. When, as an anthropologist, it becomes our responsibility to identify the problem. It is not simply to solve the problem. At one point of time, anthropologists were employed by the governments, and government used to give, see, this is what is the problem that we are facing. You try to tell us why this problem is coming. You try to give us a solution, how to go about it. Now this is one, somebody has employed you, somebody has given you a job saying that, see, I have this problem, solve it. On the other hand, you are by yourself trying to do this. What is the problem you are trying to identify? So when I say that when a government is identifying something as a problem, it might be from its own perspective. If somebody is not really ready to leave that area and maybe perhaps get accommodated at a place where government is trying to provide, as a displacement allowance or things like that, when it is trying to provide a rehabilitation, when people are not accepting. For government, the question is, why you are not accepting? I am giving you a rehabilitation. So government is asking us to find out what may be the solution. On the other hand, when you go to the field, you might feel that, okay, there are the other problems also here. People are finding it difficult to get rehabilitated because there are several reasons here. So I hope you are following what I am saying. What a problem is, identifying a problem itself is also one of the tasks of the discipline, so that you can give solutions. And in the process, trying to think critically. When I say that the discipline helps us think critically, it is not that we try to criticize people. We try to see from both the sides, whether from positive or negative whatsoever. Generally, human mind thinks in those binary oppositions, like plus and minus, 1 and 0, good and bad kind of things. We many times forget that there is a midway through also. Many times our decisions are midway through, between positive and negative. We are most of the time not sticking to one on permanent lines. Our decisions seem to be very subjective. So when we talk about think critically, we try to analyze why somebody is doing what they are doing, why somebody is opposing what government is planning, why government is not listening to what these people are saying, why government is not abiding by the request, by the pleadings of somebody. This is one example I am trying to give. Or for that matter, pick up any kind of other small entity, like you try to introduce a new kind of medical system in a tribal society. They are not ready to accept. They are not taking the new medical system. And you are hell-bent. You say that you are much more developed, much more educated. You have the entire ICMR with you. They have done the research and that's the best kind of a thing and they have to take. They are not ready to take. Or for that matter, seeds corporations from across the globe, from across the country. Government is ready to provide seeds to the rural masses. Several tribal communities are not ready to take those seeds because they think that something is wrong. What is the understanding people have? Why is it that they are not ready to accept those seeds? I mean, we would be seeing several such kind of stories and instances in the classroom to see. It's a specific thing. Case by case we will have to see why there is an opposition, why people are accepting, not accepting. So that kind of a critical thinking we would be in. And this is very, very important. For anthropologists, the major subject area of interest is something that is unfamiliar, something that is new, something that is others. I hope you are following what I'm saying. If I belong to one culture, I might be studying the other cultures. If I belong to one nation, I might be studying the other nations. So the others is always something that is an interesting area, meaning the unfamiliar is something that attracts people, something that is new that attracts anthropologists. So when we are trying to study the unfamiliar, what kind of information we will have to get from them, and our experiences in dealing with them adds strength to our discipline. So that's where we say that the discipline is very vibrant, filled with so many human experiences. This is also very, very important. Day in and day out, we see new things coming up. And it is here that, I am not getting into the very detailed thing, but then the other day I was trying to read one course from Yale universities. The curriculum was talking about this, that as an anthropologist, how you can facilitate people in different occupations to quickly learn new things, develop new strategies of learning, rather than trying to stick to the older versions, the classical versions to which they belong. One thing you will have to understand, that change is very important, accepting change is important. We should not actually call it change, maybe perhaps we have to say evolution. Evolution is very important. You have to evolve based on the necessities, based on how things go by, and that is one of the areas that we as anthropologists try to teach the people. Coming to the other ones here. Express the ideas verbally. Express the ideas verbally. See, the discipline tries to look at the others, it tries to communicate with them, do research among them, and try to jot down the researches. See, in every discipline for that matter, there might be certain theories, certain papers that you are presenting, and you also must have, at some point of time or the other in your life, you must have written about the others. Maybe perhaps you visited a place, you were a traveler, you visited a place, maybe a traveler's diary you must have written, your experience you might have written. If not you have written, you might have narrated to your friends. So you have gone to one odd country, one odd island you must have visited, some one island, some random place you have gone to. And you found people having a culture that looks to be very shocking for you, that looks to be very bizarre, and you are really shaken by that, or you found it very weird, and when you come back you try to explain to your friends that see, these people eat like this, they live like this, they wear like this, they talk like this. I mean, when you're doing that, your personality is reflected in the way you are narrating about the others. You might have seen among your friends, your family, your relatives, there are some who are always pointing at the negative of the other person. Whatever you do, they won't appreciate. So, when we look at that, I mean, that kind of a negative perspective is something that speaks about your personality. It is not simply describing them, it is how you are looking at them. So your description is not simply about what they are, your description is about what you are conceiving about them. That is what we are talking about here. Expressing their ideas in a verbal way. That's where, when you are presenting your answers, if at all you are a student from anthropology, you are much more careful in the examination about what kind of words that I can use, what kind of statements that I can write. See, this is not something that as a part of the syllabus we are teaching. It is what we call the personality, the character, the nature of the subject, how to present things in a manner that are more appealing, that are, though you are trying to present something negative about them, you are trying to present in a constructive manner. This is what we learn in the subject, I hope. And then write clearly and effectively, that's something else. And when we are trying to write effectively, we may have to incorporate different viewpoints, we may have to give weightage to people who are critical about, who are supporting, and finally you may be trying to bring your own opinion. That's a different story. Now, let me tell you a bit about other parts of your syllabus. We have diverse kinds of topics in the syllabus. This might be you or me. We try to study the diversity, cultural, linguistic, various kinds of biological diversity. Now, let me approach paper 1. The syllabus from chapter 9 to chapter 12 is generally termed as biological anthropology. Out of this, chapter 9 seems to be having a huge volume of diverse topics. Then chapter 12, which is a huge one. 10 and 11 are the moderate ones. Generally in your exam, you see 10, 11 and 12 surely coming up in the questions of more than 2. Now, this forms the second section basically, and out of these there are some segments like 9.1, 2, 3 and partly 4. They seem to be having several core genetic concepts. Nevertheless, whenever you are attempting, you see to it that how they are applied in practice. Say for example, if at all you are talking about here, you talk about population genetics. where we try to see different concepts such as genetic drift, migration, isolation. I am not listing all of them. Several such concepts and how these can change the makeup of a population. Say in a huge bunch, people have migrated out. And hence, what is the possibility that the genetic makeup of the people might change? Say, for example, people with tall stature and fairer complexion, in a big way they have migrated out. Some people that are left out. So you seem to be having a difference in the genetic makeup of, or maybe people who might have migrated, a large percentage of them might be having one particular kind of disease resistance, HIV resistance they have. The rest of the people have less HIV resistance. So what would happen in the future generations? The future generation would produce population with less HIV resistance, because a lot of people who are having the HIV resistance have migrated out. And those are the kind of things with proper examples, you would be proper contemporary examples, proper cultural examples, you should be able to incorporate in your answers. So 9.1 to 9.4 have got a lot of biological, the genetic concepts. When it comes to 9.5, I have already told you a little while ago, that's where we are going to study race, etc. You have the other things as well, 6, 7 and 8. Here you are going to study things such as ecological anthropology. We don't call them pure biological studies. There's a lot of cultural thing there. Or maybe perhaps you study things like nutritional anthropology. There is one popular concept called genetic marker. In this complete area of studies, you are actually trying to see the differences and diversities among the people based on one particular criteria. So all that effort starts here. In fact, 9.5 to 9.8, it deals with human diversity. Human diversity in terms of races, human diversity in terms of nutrition, diversity in terms of blood groups, diversity in terms of body fat, kind of thing. So here there is nothing truly biological about, but then you try to identify one biological criteria and try to mark people, try to categorize people based on, say, if you take the globe, you have maps showing the spread of blood groups, spread of body fat on particular lines, etc. So that is what you are trying to do in these particular topics. 10, 11 are basically to talk about human growth and aspects related to human growth. 12 is basically applied anthropology, if I can call applied physical anthropology. And that is where the contemporary anthropology largely lies. Huge number of contemporary topics coming up. And that's where from UPSC also tries to pick up questions. I'll give you one small example. A question such as, forensic anthropology, forensic dentistry. Your syllabus in chapter 12 talks about forensic anthropology. Now, gone are the times where examiner might ask only a bigger question like forensic anthropology for a 10-20 marker, etc. Now, examiner is going a little deeper. He can pick up the sub-branches there, sub-components there. He might give simply questions related to dermatoglyphics or fingerprints, which you must have seen in the movies, in your kind of cereals, etc., the fingerprints kind of things. These smaller entities which were there at a second or third level in the subject might be picked up as a bigger question, and you might get a full-fledged 20 marker in such kind of topics. And it is not simply that. There might be questions like, forensic archaeology. This is one of the topics that we would be introducing in the current batch, forensic archaeology. So there will be certain topics which I think are very highly relevant for the upcoming exam. These are the kind of topics which we will be incorporating in those contemporary batches. Anything that's there in your mind, you can ask any questions. Anything you have in mind, keep asking. You have any questions, ma'am? Yeah. These are very wild questions, sir. How to elaborate the works of scholars in various schools of thought? See, when you write the answers, we will be able to give a comment on how you have written. There I can improvise. So this is a very open-ended question. To study all their theories. I mean, it's a very generic kind of a one. I don't know who had asked this question, but it varies based on which thinker you are talking about and to what extent his concepts are relevant in today's times. So it's more to be done specifically rather than saying that, okay, do it superficially kind of a thing. PNAT is not mandatory to read, especially if you are not from biological sciences. We don't recommend PNAT actually. You can go with much more easier books to study from. Two books I actually recommend. One is 11th and 12th standard book, Orient Black Swan Publications. You have one, this Essentials of Human Genetics. Essentials of Human Genetics, very lucid. But then you don't have anthropological case studies there. You have concepts explained in a lucid manner. So for the conceptual understanding, Orient Black Swan, Essentials of Human Genetics, that would help. And for advanced learning, you can perhaps, because you are asking the books, I am telling you, that is, we have one book by name Steen and Rowe, Physical Anthropology. That is generally, if at all you want to prepare by yourself, kind of, I generally try to recommend that book. Physical Anthropology. But any book that you take up, your upgradations have to be done from the journals. So that is the problem with the subject actually. Yeah, if at all the person has biological background in class 11 and 12 is going to help, definitely it will help. Whatever you must have studied in your school, college, that would not go waste. So you are not really puzzled about who Darwin is. For the other people, the moment Darwin, we speak about Darwin, they might be thinking about a monkey, but you are not thinking about a monkey. You might be thinking about, okay, the fins, the birds, Galapagos kind of things. You have much better understanding. But it doesn't mean that others who did not study bio in class 11 and 12 have a major disadvantage. Whatever has to be studied in the subject. That anything. Now, when it comes to upgradations that you will have to do in your subject, you have to look at what anthropology today is. For every topic for that matter, you will have to have a current applications. I'll give you one example. Look at your paper 2. Paper 2 syllabus looks cute, small and cute, but not everything that is appealing in that way would be so easy for that matter. So, scoring in paper 2, people have found it challenging because of the kind of presentation skills that are required. We generally divide into two. One, the first part, we generally call it Indian society. Second one is tribal anthropology. Within the first part, you would be studying chapters 1 to 5. Here, chapter 1, once again, is largely based on archaeology, if you are looking into the syllabus parallelly with me. And chapter 2 is about different kinds of ethnic diversity. When I talk about ethnic diversity, that may be races, that may be language, that may be whatever kind of. The rest of the things from 3 to 5 are truly study of Indian society. I hope it is clear to you. In paper 2, first one deals with archaeology, second one deals with ethnic diversity, 3 to 5 are technically called Indian society, and they form major areas of study. They take a lot of time to study, and that's where from huge amount of questions also come. And when it comes to tribal anthropology, you have chapters from 6 to 9 generally, but then as a part of it, some kind of different topics are also presented, like as you go into the later part of the syllabus, chapter 8, etc., you will find study of religions, you will find study of nationalism, you have topics related to regionalism, kind of. So, very contemporary, and communalism. So, these things which are very much part of day-to-day discussions for common people today, they are there in the subject. But then when you are trying to present them in your answers, there is a particular way of presenting. That's a classroom thing. So, this is in brief the syllabus. And as you go down into the syllabus, by the time you come to the last chapters, questions like these come, that how far anthropology is relevant today, what is the role that is played by anthropology in understanding nationalism, regionalism, etc. So, in fact, that gives you a kind of wider perspective of such kind of problems when compared to somebody who might not have studied this particular subject. So, a fresh and more relevant kind of a perspective can be had in such kind of topics, which can be rather a subject matter or a question in topics like in papers like general essays. So, that's where you can. And otherwise, there are a few things that I wanted to discuss with you. The other day somebody was asking, if at all I take up anthropology as a career, what kinds of jobs I have. Huge varieties of them. You have diverse fields where, of course you are here, most of you for civil services, but then I have to talk about you as a social anthropologist, you have a role to play, and then social medical analyst you have, or social logistics person, social business person, customer service, and wherever you are, you have some role or the other to play. So, industry employs you, NGOs employ you, governments employ you, kind of things. The scope may not be so very captivating in terms of Indian anthropology, but then we have kind of. Any more questions, sir? So that I can talk about what we are going to do in the upcoming batch. That is always there in my mind. It has to be a learner-centered teaching so that you get to the crux of the concepts. For me, I do not mind spending a little more time so that you get the clarity of the concept. Yeah, I said this a little while ago, sir or ma'am. The role current affairs has, let me give you one example. The role current affairs has in anthropology. Definitely, you know. Say for example, I am taking from the very simple kind of questions. This is a very common kind of a topic in anthropology, very common kind of a topic in anthropology. And you can expect questions like, what is the current role played by caste, either in politics or in development, or maybe perhaps, you know, tribal education. What are the current perspectives? When we are talking about these, or if you look at chapter 5, paper 2, there is the whole lot of syllabus related to village studies, agrarian studies. So when such questions are asked, village studies, simply village studies will be the question given for 20 marks. What under the sky you will write, God knows. Agrarian communities or agrarian social structure. When such kind of questions are being attempted in the exam, by default you will have to write about past and present. And if you are only sticking to this, your evaluation is being done only for 50%. So you will have to have a comparative answer of present and past. That is, no, that's, I think, speaks volumes of relevance of current affairs. Anything you have in mind, sir? When it comes to the question is genetics should be studied deeply or in an overview. See, when I am talking about genetics, which is a very wide and very contemporary, evolving and highly scientific oriented subject. When we are studying here in social sciences, we expect you to know the basics of the subject, and your answers have to be a combination of the basic aspect of the genetics and how this is being studied in anthropology. I give you one small example. You have one topic in chapter 12, paper 1, where there is something called paternity diagnosis. Paternity diagnosis. That has become a controversial and very interesting, scintillating area of study for various reasons in the contemporary times. If he gives you a question on paternity diagnosis, it is not simply sufficient that you explain the ways of paternity diagnosis. That only forms a part of it. Your second part of the answer has to be how paternity diagnosis is relevant in anthropological studies. So if the student is sticking only to the first part, say for example, if you look at 9.4 in your syllabus, in 9.4 there is a discussion of, for example, autosomal chromosomal disorders. When we talk about autosomal chromosomal disorders or sex chromosomal disorders, the expectation is not that you are going to fill your answer with all the kind of scientific data and research that you are doing as a biologist, but then you give in brief what the disorder is, what are the causative aspects, and why an interest in anthropology, which culture groups have been in focus in the study of that particular disorder. So Down syndrome you are studying, which are the culture groups that have been taken up by anthropologists as a reference model, and what as a physical anthropologist you would do to mitigate the problem in increasing or whatsoever. So the thing is, beyond a particular limit, we don't expect you to go in for them. So there's a frame of reference within which you would be studying. Now, on that note, let me take you to what we are going to do in the upcoming days. For this season, from 23rd of June, we would be starting your next program, that is in the offline mode. When I am saying offline mode, as of now, government has still not announced the day when we can launch the offline program. But there have been several students who have been waiting for this, and we also want to see your faces in the class, so that we can feel life in the class, rather than seeing the chair and talking kind of a thing. And so what we are doing is, we do not want to change the calendar, because students will also lose if we postpone the calendar kind of. So we would be starting on that day, and we would be doing the daily recordings of the videos and posting on your portal. This would happen maybe the 10-15 classes initially, till which time government opens up the establishments for the physical running of the classes. Once the government announces, then we would switch over from the offline to the online thing. And as far as your next online batch is concerned, that is from July 14th we would be starting, and this course would be based on the current lectures that we are going to start from June 23rd. That's how the things are, and the lectures would go up to about 100 classes, wherein we would be having your classroom program, classroom notes, and revised printed note, the recent PDFs of the relevant new articles from the journals. That's generally what I would be providing to you. And we also have regular test series along with the course. A test series consists of 8 major tests and self-assessment based assignments. Generally, whatever is the test or assignment, I would be discussing in the classroom, what should be the structure of the questions, etc. Almost on a daily basis, we will be picking up 1 or 2 questions. We will be discussing how to present in the examination, so that right from the beginning you are actually learning to start to write. Whenever you are starting a new subject, the major difficulty you find is how to present my views. I am understanding, but how to present. And people would come up with questions like, when exactly I should start writing the answer? Should I wait till the course is over? Should I start from now, kind of? So we generally ask the student to start right from the beginning. So right from the beginning, we will be picking up questions. We will be giving you orientation, how to approach a question, even with the limited knowledge that you are getting in the beginning of the course. So this is one. And in some of the batches, we generally take up an intensive program, intensive writing program. About this, we will be intimating to you at a later point of time. That's a special drive that we take up. About the intensive program, we will be communicating to the students at a later point of time. So that's how things are. And for further information, you can write to us or call us and things like that. Anything else is there? So I think that's where I close the session for today. Thanks for joining. Any further queries are there? This particular video would be posted a little while later in the regular YouTube viewing. So maybe perhaps once again you can watch there, you can come up with your questions whatsoever. And that's how things are. That's where I call it today. Thank you so much, sir.